Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 82 of the In a Nutshell podcast. It's our part two of our third basketball power rankings. I'm your host, Sean Vowells, and Joe Meade is with me. If you have not checked out part one already, please do. We're going to take it from the second half of the teams in alphabetical order. All right. Up there is the 9 teams that we've already ranked. We finished off with the Ohio State Buckeyes. So that means, Joe, we've got the Oregon Ducks up next. Incredibly mixed bag. They're 16-4 on the season, 5-4 in the Big Ten. They have 8 quad one wins, but this is not a bracketology show. This is just power ranking the teams straight up. So, Joe, Oregon has definitely had the weirdest season all around. And the Ducks took a tough loss today on the road to Minnesota. They've lost big at home a couple of times. What do you think about the Ducks?
I think they're a really good team, Sean, that when they play bad, play really bad. I don't know the scholarly way to put it. Um, I think they've missed a lot of good opportunities, particularly the Purdue game at home and, definitely today against Minnesota. And not that that's an opportunity, probably more to avoid a quad two loss, but they've also won a lot of close games they should have won, that being Ohio State and Penn State, because they're bailed out by Jackson Shellstad. So, again, you can't take away the body of work and the wins they've had because winning at Penn State, winning at Ohio State, and beating Maryland at home, those are all three quad one wins right there. And you can't say, oh, they were close, so they don't count. That, of course, is silly. So, because they're well coached and because they could score, uh, they've certainly they're certainly pretty lucky to have the record they have. Although I will say, I think there could be trouble brewing if they continue this inconsistent play. To put it simply, though, Sean, uh, because of their body of work and because of the fact that even in some of their losses, they could have played a little better, and maybe they're chasing Michigan State right now. I'm gonna put Oregon in fourth.
All right, so you had them in second last time, so a little bit of a drop down. I had them in seventh last time, and that's where I'll be leaving them. I just think they're going to get a pretty good seed in the tournament, probably a 4 or a 5. They still did win the Players Era tournament back in November, where they beat Alabama, Texas A&M. They beat some awesome teams there. So, um, again, I think we all thought that maybe that was a little bit on the fluky side, but they're still able to win close games. It's just that a whole lot more of them are close than we once thought. So, again, I think that as long as they can steer clear of that 8-9 game, they're going to get a really good seed in the NCAA tournament, probably get a win or two in the Big Ten tournament, and overall, we had them, if the first power rankings are up there, Joe, for the viewers, we had them in eighth. So if they still finish in seventh or fifth or sixth, they'll still be above what we thought at the beginning of the year. So I've got them in seventh. You've got them in fourth. Just a really interesting team. They have 3 road wins already, 3 home losses. Again, just been a really weird team all around. All right, up next, Joe, we're going to go to the Penn State Nittany Lions, 3-6 in the league, 13-7 overall. Definitely a really good non-conference from them. They beat, their metrics were very good at coming out of that. But they have not quite hit their stride in conference. They really started playing well early in the league when the calendar turned to 2025. They had a couple nice wins, but it's pretty clear that they are a step below the elite. They lost big to Illinois. They lost to Michigan State. They lost to Oregon. And they have suffered a couple of home losses. Again, one to Indiana. They still did beat Purdue by a lot way back in December, but Joe, at least at this point, it might look like Penn State peaked a little bit too early, and now they're just trying to find their footing, see if they can maybe get themselves into the middle of the pack. What do you think?
Sean, I think this is a team that goes the way Ace Baldwin goes a lot, and the him playing 40 minutes is kind of ridiculous at this stage of the season. I think Mike Rhodes ultimately has been more of a pleasant surprise when I look at their entire season. I do think this is a team that they played well enough to win at Michigan State at times. Had they not dug themselves a hole, they definitely played well enough to beat Oregon. So again, looking at the results, not just for the final score, but for how they played, I think they played well enough in a lot of these games. But they've had some clunkers, the Illinois, the Indiana certainly a few weeks back, and then last night losing to Iowa, a team that was really hurts. So with all that said, Sean, I think this is a team that will make the Big Ten tournament because they can score enough and they have enough good players and they are well coached enough. I just think depth is going to come back to bite them more often than not. With that said, that's why I have them in 14th. They're going to win a few more games. It wouldn't shock me at all if they beat Michigan on Monday, to be quite honest with you, because they're going to get a team on the road. They're going to get another quad one away win. That's the kind of team they are. They could play well enough to beat a Michigan on the road, to beat a UCLA, to beat a Indiana even on the road, or a Wisconsin, which are some of their remaining road games. So, uh, Penn State Nittany Lions 14th for me.
I just don't think that their game plan is good enough to consistently win. They don't shoot a lot of threes. They take a lot of contested twos. They do have 6 players who average in double figures, but they don't get much from anyone else. So, you know, Niederhauser isn't exactly the shot blocker that I thought. Their 2 point defense isn't great. It's just kind of an okay team. If somebody rolls into Bryce Jordan Center without their A game, they're probably going to lose. And if you're at home and you play well, you're probably going to win. And I don't know if they're, the Purdue game was definitely the pinnacle of their season. They won by 11, but they were up by as much as 30 in that second half. I don't know if that performance is possible again. But I have them just one spot better in 13th. I agree with you. They'll win some games. They're probably not on the inconsistent side, actually. I think they are pretty consistent. It's just the ceiling there isn't quite as good, and their floor is probably, like, you probably have to play well to beat them. But again, I think it's pretty simple for Penn State. It is a step in the right direction for Mike Rhodes in year 2, but I don't think the heights that they reached in December and January are really what they really are. So 13th for me, 14th for you. All right, we got Purdue up next, Joe. Again, coming off of the runner-up finish last year, they're 16-5 overall, 8-2 in the league. They played a really tough non-conference schedule. Got a couple of nice wins over Ole Miss and Alabama, and they did have that humbling loss to Penn State in the early part of the season. They lost to Texas A&M. They lost to Auburn. It was all going pretty well for them until they lost at home to Ohio State. They bounced back with a nice win over Michigan. They went on the road to Oregon and won. They went to the barn and won handily. They went to the rack and won handily. Joe, this team might not be the elite Boilermakers that we saw last year, but they're still pretty good. They're still probably a top 15 team in the country, and they're headed for a double bye. It's almost certain.
Yeah, I think they're certainly headed for a double bye. I think aside from the Ohio State and Penn State performance, it's hard to do anything but be really impressed with this Purdue team. Are they the consistent juggernaut they were last year? Certainly not. But Braden Smith's played well enough. Fletcher Lawyer, he has his ups and downs shooting wise, but when he's on, they're possible to beat. And then Trey Kaufman-Renn, I think he's really stepped it up this year. So um, I think quite simply, Purdue is a top 2 or 3 team in this conference. Right now, I have them at 3, which is going to stun a lot of people because the team I have in 2 is really going to, spoiler alert, it's going to be toward the end. I think a lot of people are going to be really appalled I put them there, but I'll explain why later. But right now, I have Purdue at 3, and I don't think they're going to come off that. I think they only have potential to go up. I don't think they'll be going down much lower than 4 or maybe 5 if they lose a few dumb games.
Yeah, Braden Smith is probably the Big Ten Player of the Year at this point, Joe. I don't think there's anyone else who really has a claim. He's playing pretty much every game. He's shooting at a good rate. He's assisting. The Lawyer's making enough shots right now, and Kaufman-Renn is really good. That big 3 has been pretty solid. It's just really come down to what the others can give them. Caleb First, since being in the starting lineup, their defense has gotten a lot better. They've done a couple things different scheme-wise. And then just finding that 5th player, whether it's C.J. Cox, Jakari Harris, Miles Colvin, Cam Heide, they really haven't got much out of any of those players yet. So I think the ceiling for Purdue might be a little higher than we thought last time we did this. Their good performances are pretty good. Now, they beat Alabama at home. They beat Michigan by a lot, who's a good team at home. They beat Nebraska by almost 40. We thought that maybe that extra gear wasn't quite there. I think it might be. So I've got Purdue in second. I do think that um, really for them, the big question is going to be the NCAA tournament because I think we probably give them the benefit of the doubt for that Ohio State home loss, being that they backed it up with a big victory against a good team. They still have to play Indiana twice. What does that really do? Are they able to win both of those? Um, I think unless Michigan State really screws up, they're not going to win the league. But the only way to find out is to hold serve until they do. So
Yeah, the only way that happens, Sean, is if they lose the two in LA. I think quite simply, barring a home disaster, which I don't foresee, uh, the field's best chance versus Michigan State is Michigan State dropping the two in LA.
and the only matchup between the two is at the Breslin Center. So it's going to be really hard for Purdue. They're going to have to win that one and then pick up another game on them, which again will be really tough, being that Purdue has to go to um, Michigan. They have to go to Assembly Hall. They have to play Wisconsin. It's just there's a lot of things that they have to go to Illinois on the last day of the season. Like that's a lot of games to hold serve in just to hope that Michigan State stubs their toe. But I think they're going to finish in second. They're going to head towards a protected seed, and we'll see what happens for them in the NCAA tournament. All right, up next, Joe, is our Rutgers Scarlet Knights back in New Jersey. They're 3-6 in the league, 10-10 overall. Somewhat high expectations coming into the year with two players that are likely to be in the top 5 of the NBA draft. But after losing all of their role players in the transfer portal, they've filled them in with some pretty questionable players. And, Joe, it's not been good for the Scarlet Knights. They're near the bottom of the league. Harper and Bailey are awesome to watch, but this team's defensive identity isn't quite there from over the years. They are able to play up to competition a little bit and hang with some better teams, but they're losing games at home, and this isn't the Scarlet Knights that we've seen over the past 10 years since they joined the Big Ten.
Sean, I realized I made an error. I think I double listed a team, so we might have to move a few teams down when it comes to Rutgers. But in terms of consistency, this is a team that has zero. The one thing they've done well is they could score because of the Harper and Bailey presence, but when one of them is not present due to injury, present due to other reasons, or not shooting well, this is one of the more beatable teams in the conference because they don't defend the same way. So really only because of the star potential and based on some of the home games they've won and the Nebraska one. I'm gonna put them in 16th, and I know we're gonna have to move Nebraska down, or
Yeah.
because Washington's gonna be at 18, so
Okay.
I messed this up.
So
This
you've
is
got
totally my
11
fault.
through 17. Um, you've got 11 through 17 in there. So if you want to put them at 16, you want me to bump
Yeah.
everybody up one?
Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
All right.
That's all my fault, the viewers. I did this last time, and I knew I double listed someone.
All right. So you've got Rutgers there in 16th.
Yep.
Okay. I have got them in 17th, Joe. I just think that Steve Peichel, for so many years, I feel like was waiting for this sort of talent to come in. The culture was there. It was built, the defensive strength. And then it's really a shame that the first year that they have talent to finish near the top of the league, they aren't able to have those role players stick around. They have 2 NBA players, and they're one of the worst teams in this league. They're probably like a middle of the pack Atlantic 10 team without those two. And I know they're there, so we would never see it, but it's just unfortunate. I do think he'll get another year, but that's what we said
Oh, and
last year.
if he doesn't get another year, that's absurd, to be honest with
But
you.
that's what we said last year because these two were coming in. So, again, a lot of soul searching for the Rutgers program after the year. They've still got some fight left in them, though. They've kept it close against a number of good teams, and if they keep doing that, one of them will go their way, especially if it's at the rack. Again,
Yeah.
today they held Michigan State for most of it at Madison Square Garden, which was a pseudo home game for them. But again, it is just unfortunate because, Joe, we're gonna have to worry about not seeing those two in the Big Ten tournament, let alone the NCAA tournament, because they're 3-6 right now. They've got Northwestern on the road. They've got Michigan and Illinois coming to town, and there's only so many winnable games left for them. So I've got them in 17th. You've got them in 16th. All right, up next, we're going to go out to California, Joe. This time for the UCLA Bruins, 5-4 in the league and 14-6 overall in the season. It's the Bruins have had some fireworks this year, for good and for bad. They've had some awesome press conference moments from Mick Cronin. They have a couple of good wins in the non-conference. They beat Gonzaga pretty nicely. They beat Arizona, which that win is aging very nicely. The Wildcats are playing well in the Big 12. They did lose to North Carolina. They won on the road at Oregon. It's just been a really big mixed bag for the Bruins right now, Joe. And in a league this good, that's good enough to be probably a 6 or a 7 seed in the tournament. But what do you think about the Bruins?
I think the Bruins are still a really good team. I think, similar to the stretch Michigan's in right now, they had a really bad one from the time they played Nebraska, which, kind of reached the climax of the Maryland game where Mick Cronin purposely got ejected. And I liked how he owned the fact that if you haven't watched that interview, it's definitely it is certainly worth the watch. But UCLA has enough good players. They have Bilodeau, who I've been impressed with most of the year. I think Eric Daly Jr. is where they can really improve. If he continues to play well, because he's played well in a lot of games, and they can continue to get production off the bench, I think this could be a really good team that figures it out toward March. And certainly betting against Mick Cronin in March is not a wise tactic. I think most people in the country know that. I would warn our viewers in the conference to also do the same. So this is a team that's going to tough it up. They're going to win some of the close games like you've seen. And with that shot, that's why I have UCLA in seventh place. I know I picked them to win the Big Ten. That's certainly probably out of the picture now. But what I will say is they're going to beat one of these teams at the top. Perhaps they beat a Michigan State. Perhaps they beat a Purdue. But I don't think the story's over yet for the Bruins.
Yeah, they were able to get past that losing streak with a nice win against Iowa, and then a win against Washington on the road.
And Wisconsin.
Yeah, in Wisconsin, they were able to beat them too. So they're over that. I think they're headed in the right direction. I think the ceiling might not be as high as we initially thought. I had them in fifth originally. You had them in first, and our second rankings, I had them a spot higher in fourth. But again, I have them in eighth. I just think that they're pretty good overall. Just with the amount of travel they've had to do, I just think they're going to get stuck around 11-9, 10-10 in this league, and they have certainly enough good wins to be probably a 7 or 6 seed in the tournament, even with that record. But they do have a little bit of a stretch here, Joe, where they don't have to go on a plane for a little bit. We've alluded to it in some of our other videos that have been the audio is corrupted, but they played their road game right now. They haven't had to leave the West Coast since the 13th of January. They had to go up to Washington, but their road game against USC, that's a bus ride. They host Oregon at home. They host Michigan State. They host Penn State. So if they're going to be a lot of time on campus, a lot of time in practice these next couple weeks. Get a little streak going and see if you can get away from the middle of the pack. Because, Joe, we've talked about this a couple times. There's a distinct possibility that UCLA and Oregon are playing in the 8-9 game at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time on Thursday at the Big Ten tournament. So let's hope that they don't have to do that for their fans. And I think they are good enough to get out of that 8-9. But I've got them in 8th. You've got them in 7th. Just been a mixed bag, and I think we can expect more of that for the Bruins.
Yeah, Sean, and I would heed the only way that USC trip gets longer is if they lose and have a piss poor effort. Because I wouldn't put it past Mick Cronin based on his press conferences this year to make all those kids walk back.
Yeah, it is a crosstown rivalry. I don't think we have two other schools that close in the Big Ten. Purdue and Indiana are 2-3 hours away. Michigan State and Michigan the same.
Like an hour, yeah.
Yeah, Penn State and Rutgers probably 2 hours, maybe 3.
That's so more of a 4.5, to be honest. Yeah.
I think they are the closest remaining Big Ten schools. So that's just a big one for both the teams. And we'll roll into USC next, Joe, because they're a team that looked like that they were going to finish near the bottom of this league, and you could somewhat understand that in year one for Eric Musselman, an entire new squad coming in there, but they've gotten off the mat. They're 4-4 in the league, 12-7. They were able to win on the road at Illinois. They were able to win on the road at Nebraska. They knocked off Iowa. This team, led by Desmond Claude, is not the pushover that they may have appeared to be early on. You have to be impressed with the last, 2 to 3 week resurgence from the Trojans.
I'm more than impressed, especially because two of those victories came at the hands of Illinois and at Pinnacle Bank. And for USC, I think of the road games where UCLA, USC's played, USC's looked a lot more impressive. Now that's easy to say because they have more wins on the road. But conversely, Sean, they've looked good in their home losses. I thought, aside from the Wisconsin game, they played well enough to beat Michigan. They had them in certain stretches, and the Oregon game I thought also could have went their way. That was earlier in December, but this is a team with Desmond Claude. He's just been taking over games late, and if you watch that Nebraska game, I give all the credit to that last 6 minute stretch to Desmond Claude. Like I said, he was either assisting or scoring on their last few field goals. So USC, I'm going to put them in ninth, Sean. I will say there's a huge separation to me between, UCLA at seven, Illinois at eight, and then there's like a big drop off to USC at nine. But I think this is an top half of the conference team because they're putting it together. They have the talent. And this is nothing new for Eric Musselman. He puts all this talent together. He just needs to figure out how to work with it. And I think by February, that spark is going to be there, and they're going to win a lot more games.
Yeah, I've got them in 11th, Joe, just a couple spots below. Um, I think I haven't watched them a ton this year, only a couple times, and they didn't look. They were thoroughly beaten by Indiana in a rather mediocre effort, I think. And then ever since then, they've been the better team more times than not. Even in a couple losses that they had, I thought they were right there with they obviously took care of business against Illinois. They were the better team against Iowa, the better team at Nebraska. So again, I think I'm happy as an Indiana fan that we got them over with when we did because they're surging in the right direction. You would have to think they will be favored Monday night against UCLA at home. The Galen Center is at times it's a tough place to play over the years and back into Pac-12 land a couple of years ago, but that'll be an interesting one. Monday night, 10 p.m. Eastern on FS1. That's one of the worst time slots of the year for what might be a pretty big game. Because Joe, USC's 12-7. The door for an at-large bid is not shut on them,
Not at all.
and they're gonna have to keep playing like this and probably get a little lucky with a bunch of nice wins. But they're a team that's trending in the right direction, and at this point, you have to think that they'll keep it going. It seems sustainable. Desmond Claude is a first team all conference player at this point. They host Michigan State. I think USC could win that one. And then, their road games are manageable. They go to Maryland, Rutgers, Northwestern, and then they still have to play Oregon, Washington, UCLA again to end their year. So I like where the Trojans are at right now. They are in 10th in the league, and I think they'll probably finish around there, but they're going to have to keep playing well to do that because somebody's going to have to win every game in this league. All right, we got two teams left, Joe. The Washington Huskies. And as the viewers can see, we both have two spots left. It's pretty evident where the teams will go. Washington 1-8 in the league, 10-10 overall. It's been a tough first year for Great Osabor and Danny Sprinkle and the Washington Huskies. They were able to beat Maryland at home. That's their only conference win at this point, Joe. And they're able to keep a couple of these games close, but they're still losing at home to the better teams in the league, and they're headed. They're not going to be headed to the Big Ten tournament.
No, Sean, I think it's very simple. They're at 18th, and I don't think it's a lack of coaching prowess from Danny Sprinkle. I think it's more of a victim of a roster. And the fact, let's face it, Sean, Washington's pretty clear they don't invest in basketball the way that some of these newer programs, newer coaches and programs do. A Dusty May or even to an extent a Jake Diebler, right? So at Ohio State. So no, Sean, I think they pick up one or two more wins at home against a less than ready foe. But outside of that, I don't see them pulling off any road victories. And unfortunately for them, because I do think they're a likable enough squad, I think they stay home At this point, if they don't stay home for the Big Ten tournament, starting now, Danny Sprinkle should be my coach of the year
Yeah,
if they
they
find a way to climb to 15th.
yeah,
Really.
it's just not a team that you really want to play if you're any other team, I think, because there is
Yeah.
not really any benefit to doing so. And Washington, from like there's been a number of close games where they could have won. So
Yeah.
Indiana has to go there. Not looking forward to that. You already went there, right?
They
Michigan.
came to us. We didn't
Mich-
have to go there. Yeah.
okay, so again, they are being paired with Oregon, so teams are going out there to play them and Oregon, and Maryland was the only team that went 0-2 in that trip so far. So, they're going to be it's going to be tough for them. I think this year can be written off pretty easily for them, and we'll see where Danny Sprinkle, who took Utah State, to a really good spot, should give him a couple of years before we grade his coaching job. All right, up next, Joe, we got the Wisconsin Badgers up last, 5-3 in the league and 15-4. Another team that peaked really early, took a couple of lumps, and then appears to be trending back on the up. January has been they went to LA, went 1-1. They had a couple close wins. They dropped 116 points on Iowa. They won at the rack. They won handily against Minnesota. Perhaps the Badgers have had a little bit of an easier run of games here, but they're taking care of business, and as of right now, they're in fourth place.
Yeah, Sean, I really think they should have won that UCLA game too. So that's why I have Wisconsin in second. I know this is going to be the more controversial take of the episode and whatnot. I think John Blackwell's becoming a star in the making, and we saw flashes of that last year with him in a more role player role. Steven Crown, Nolan Winter, you're getting enough from those guys, and then off the bench, you're getting enough from a Xavier Amos and Carter Gilmore and Jack Janicki. You know, the drop off Wisconsin's had when their starters have come out hasn't been as drastic as the last 2 years, which I think's mainly 2 years ago, but the last 2 years has been an issue. I think Wisconsin, had they not started 0-2 in this conference, I think a lot more people would be considering them a top four team, to be completely honest with you. I don't think they've garnered the respect they deserve. I think that 3 game stretch in December was is long behind them now because had they played Michigan, Illinois, and Marquette back to back to back, I guarantee you they don't go 0-3.
Yeah, it's just again, I think they have had a little bit of an easier run of games here. Joe, their February is brutal. It's Northwestern away, Indiana at home, Iowa away, Purdue away, Illinois at home, Oregon at home, and then they go to the Breslin in the beginning of March. So there's a lot of tough games in there. I just can't really see them getting into the top two, so I have them in third right now. They're a good team. They are not reliant on John Tanji to go crazy anymore like they were early on in the year. Blackwell has made a really nice step forward. He's looking pretty likely to be on an all-conference team. Crowell, again, in double figures, and Klesmet starting to make shots a little bit. He's still not quite where he's capable of, but Wisconsin fans have got to like where they're at. So, Joe, that is our Big Ten power rankings. We have just two similarities. Three, sorry. That is the first place Michigan State Spartans, the last place Washington Huskies, and then we both have Penn State in 13th. So, Joe, unless you got anything else to add, we're going to wrap up Power Rankings version 3.
Yeah, and I guarantee you there's going to be a lot more drops and rises the next time we do this in February.
Yeah, so it'll depend how. I would like to do this at least one more time before the Big Ten tournament. Again, the week before the conference tournaments will be a really busy one for us with all the stuff that we'll be doing. So at least one more this year, and we'll hope to get to it at the end of the next month. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to our power rankings. Please check out our other videos. Please check out the post that I'm going to make in a second with these rankings, teams 1 through 18, and we'll see you next time.